back vibe, baby.
Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe, and I'm really excited to talk to our guest today. We have Jason D. Jason D has been sober since September 26, 2019. He's an active member of the Open Door Group in Lancaster, California. He's a devoted husband, a proud father of 5, has 4 grown kids and a 17-year-old still at home, and a loving grandfather to 5 grandkids, with another on the way. So he's a busy man. When he's not working or hitting the books in college, Jason is fully committed to his greatest passion, sobriety. And let's not forget his furry companions who keep his life very interesting. Jason is winging it all the way from Alaska today. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Joe. Thanks for having me on here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. What am I doing right now? Let's see. Well, I'm from Southern California. I'm from the Los Angeles area, Antelope Valley. It's just a little north of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in Anchorage, Alaska right now. 2 reasons. Selfishly, there was a Alcoholics Anonymous conference up here, a general service conference. So I got to come up here for 3 days and do that. And just so happens that my son, who's expecting my grandchild, lives right here in Anchorage. So here I am now. I'm spending 3-4 days with the family. But I got my Alcoholics Anonymous conference in, so that was exciting. And now a little bit of me time, and now a little bit of family time. So it's all good. Yeah.
We get to do these things. That's an old friend used to always say that.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking this morning, we went on this hike up over and we got to see the I guess it's called the Kenai Bay. And we're sitting over this cliff and I'm looking at all the mountains and the Denali Mountain and all that stuff. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I would have always done this stuff. I would have done this stuff before, but I either would have been drunk doing or if I wasn't drunk, I would be like, let's hurry up and finish this so I can get back and go have a drink. And it's like you mentioned, I have 5 years of sobriety and I'm very grateful for that. So my story was my mom is an alcoholic. She actually just celebrated 48 years active recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. My dad died of alcoholism. And my brother's got 17 years of sobriety, and here I am. I've got a sister who doesn't have this thing. I asked her the other day, I says, she can have like a glass of wine. She goes, I don't even want a glass. It doesn't do anything for me, and so my family has a lot of history of alcoholism. And the funny thing about my story, I think is very funny, is growing up in Alcoholics Anonymous. When I was 7 years old, I was running around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous because my mom and my dad, they got a divorce because of just both being alcoholics. And my dad decided to continue on his journey of active drinking. And my mom got into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So she had three kids, and she's a single mom, and I grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous. She was a single mom, and she would bring us to the meetings, and I remember that being a kid. And I got to grow up around her, always going to meetings, and I got to see my brother go through his addiction and alcoholism. He loved to smoke a little bit of crack once he started drinking, and we're deep trying to save him. And the whole time I'm drinking and I don't even realize that I'm caught up in this alcoholism. I've had the same job for 18 years. So we can do the math. I've been sober for 5. And so I was 13 years of active drinking on the job, before the job, after the job, I'll get into that. And my wife's also an alcoholic. We have the same sobriety date, which makes it, I'm blessed. She's never like, oh, you're going to another meeting or anything like that. She knows what's up. And I'm going through this, my alcoholism, same job. Me and my wife been together probably 23 years. And I never, ever knew that I was an alcoholic. And part of that for me is because I did have the same job and she hadn't left me and all that stuff. But the whole time that I'm going to my mom's house and walking in her house with a 30-pack of beer, just totally disrespectful. And she would say, Jason, you might have this allergy. And I say, Mom, no, I love to drink. I love to drink, and everything I did, I had, beer in my hand at that point. And I never knew that I was an alcoholic because it didn't click with me, because I wasn't the guy begging for money outside the liquor store.
Yeah.
I was stealing a lot of money from work to go buy my alcohol and stuff like that. And the whole time that that my wife and I are drinking, we're living in hotels because we can't keep a house. We're getting repossessions. I'm going to jail. I spent a lot of time in jail, all this stuff, but I never connected it to the drinking. Even though there were DUIs and stuff like that, I never made the connection that I have a problem with alcohol. My reality was I love to drink. And if I can just figure out how to drink successfully, everything will be okay. I didn't start drinking until I was really 25 years old. When I was 25 years old, I had my first real drunk, but to talk about before that first drink, because that's a lot of what's going on even today. Before I had that first drink, I was a very quiet kid. I like to call it shy back then. I said I was a shy kid, but I know now I wasn't a shy kid. I was a very self-conscious kid. I was very self-conscious about what people would think of me. I was very quiet in school. Even though I wasn't dumb, but I wasn't like, I just, if I knew the answer, even in class, I wouldn't raise my hand because I was too concerned about, even though I knew the right answer, it's going to come out stupid and people are going to laugh at me, So I just was a very quiet kid and got married to my first wife with a couple of kids. She got pregnant, we got married, and by the time I was 21 years old, I had 3 children. I had never really drank. It was just from 19 years on, just boom, 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 and living in Orange County at that time, trying to hustle and with 3 kids and survive. And it never occurred to me to go have a drink. But trust me, I needed one, I needed one. I was ready for one. I was ready for a drink. I was ready for a drink when I was a young child, but it didn't connect, I was just a very lonely, isolated, separate. I separated myself from everybody. Now, if I just, I don't understand how they do, communication and stuff like that. And so I was just a loner kid pretty much. Just go to school and then come home. And in the 80s, it was computers, and I would just do my computers and go to bed and wake up and go to school real quick, get in and out and come home. And I was pretty much a loner. And something happened to me at 25 years old. I was sitting there and sitting there at work, and someone said, you want to go to the bar? And I said, 25 years old. I said, yeah, you know what? I've never been to a bar before. I want to go to a bar,
Yeah.
And I went and I had my first real drunk, and I loved it. I immediately, I could, we all hear the story, but this is my story. My story is immediately that shy, self-conscious kid was like the life of the party. I was talking to strangers and laughing and asking people to dance, and I was out there having such a great time. And at 2 a.m, when everyone else says, okay, we got to go, we got to work tomorrow, I said, no, I want to keep going. This is great. I'm like released from the bondage of self, and I just don't care, and I can communicate and be part of the world. And I figured out what life was about. And I didn't become a drunk immediately, but I'll tell you that within 2 weeks, I left my first wife and 3 kids. I left them. I lost my job, and I just found a new path in life. And I wanted to drink, my whole delusion the whole time for those what is it, 20 some odd years, 25 years of drinking, was that I was not an alcoholic until like the last like 6 months before I got here. I just thought, oh, it just got bad. But you know what? For me to lose my job, I know now it was for drinking on the job immediately.
Right.
Within like the next day of discovery of that first drunk, it's just like I'm drinking during the day and leaving my wife and family, and I think of myself as a good guy. I was affected severely by this release of self, and I loved it. And I didn't become like the guy drinking like drunk every day. It started out, I remember years ago when I could work all day, and I would grab a 6-pack of beer on my way home. And if I got home at 8 o'clock at night and I had to go to bed at 11, I did see it then, but I see it more now. It's like if I had 8 to 11, I had 6 beers, I would pace them out. Every 30 minutes, I would have a beer. Boom, boom, boom. I could not like be like done drinking at 10 and then like stay up for an hour and watch TV. I just couldn't do it. I had to pace it out to where I had to drink all the way up until I went to bed. And that was the first way that I just drank, and that was just after work. And then what happened is years later, this is the progression of my alcoholism. Years later, I'm with my wife now. We're going to bars and all that stuff, but I still just drank after work. But what happened was we moved somewhere, and a guy moved in next to us, and he came over to introduce himself. And instead of bringing me like a cake or a pie, he brought me a 12-pack of Bud Light, and he says, "Do you want to drink in the morning on the weekends in the garage?" And I'm like, holy cow, I've never done that before. That sounds exciting. Let's go. And I started drinking in the morning with this guy. And what that did was that just progressed me to a new level. I learned to like drink in the morning. And then I know now, about this allergy that I have, but I started drinking in the morning and I would never stop. And then come to the last, probably 10 to 15 years of my drinking, my story is that I would wake up in the morning and I was allowed to have 4 beers before I went to work. This was acceptable in my life for the last 10 to 15 years. 4 beers, right? I know now my wife's an alcoholic, so that's why she was letting me get away with it. But I was the guy who would start out my first beer in the shower. I would have a beer in the shower as I'm getting ready for work. I got my 4 beers, but of course that's not enough now. So as I'm going to work, I'm getting a tall can of Bud Light, and then I'm at work, and every hour and a half, I have to dip out and go get another beer. And I'd come home with a fresh 18-pack and drink all the way up until I'd fall asleep. And then I would even wake up at 4 a.m. and drink 4 more beers because my mind would start racing. I would drink 4 beers from 4 to 5 in, and then I would be able to go back to sleep for 2 hours. And then I would wake up again, and I'd do that again. And I did that again for years. I did that over and over every day for 10 years, just drinking beer all day. If my eyes were open, I was drinking. And, I'll say right now, because it's important for me to say whenever I talk, because there was a good period of time when I got sober that I didn't know that I suffer from this allergy. I talked about my mom and my dad being alcoholics, and my brother is an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. They say only 1 in 1,000 people are alcoholics. 1 in 1,000 people do this to themselves, are willing to give up everything for alcohol. And, the coincidence of, the 4 of us out of 5 in my family being alcoholics is astronomical. So, what that means for me is I suffer from this allergy. I process alcohol differently, that when I put a drink in my body, I get this phenomenon of craving, right? And I don't want to stop. It's kind of like, you look at people at the restaurants and they leave like a half a beer sitting on the table, and it's just like, whoa, how do they do that? I can't do that. And it's the same way they look at us when they're like, why are you destroying your life? And you're like, I don't know. When I take one, I don't like break out in a rash. But what happens is when I take one, my mind changes, and I say, I'm going to have another one, and I'm going to have another one. And I promised her I'll be home at 5, but what happens at 5 o'clock? I say, well, you know what? I'm just going to go till 6. And at 6 o'clock, I say, well, what now? Well, I'm going to go till 7. She's probably already pissed off, but you know what? She'll deal with it. And before I know it, I'm in Los Angeles in a strip club or something, just doing crazy stuff. That's not me being a jerk. That's me having, I think it's a good time, but what it is I'm caught up in this allergy where when I put one in, I cannot stop. And that's what I have. That's my alcoholism. The definition of an alcoholic is not the guy who begs for money at the liquor store. The definition of an alcoholic is when I want to stay stopped, which means I'm not going to do it again. I promise I'm not going to do it again. I do it again. And then the second part is, can I control the amount I take? When I have one, am I able to stop and put it down and just go mow the lawn or whatever I'm going to do? It's impossible for me. I'm not able to do it. But I don't see it while I'm in it. I just think I love to drink. I love to drink, right? So anyway, I'm holding down the same job. Now I'm drinking all kinds of vodka, and it's this disease is getting progressively worse. I want to kill myself at 6 months before I get sober. I get another DUI 3 months before I get sober. The house is just my relationship is getting worse and worse, and I was very demoralized. I just could not break this cycle. I had not experienced any time sober whatsoever. Unless I was in jail, I was drinking. That's just my MO. And something happened in September of 2019. I came home obliterated once again from work, and like obliterated, because just beer wouldn't do it for me anymore. And I used to drink a lot. I mean, I discovered I did a lot of cocaine for a while too. It's important. It's part of my story. It's good to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I know now is that I didn't do that because the reason I did cocaine was because when I would do coke, I could stay up longer, drink twice as much, not black out, stay up till 5 a.m. doing coke, catch 2 hours sleep, get up, do some more, start drinking. And it was just like, and that really got me to my bottom really quick. And when I stopped doing that, then that's when the vodka really kicked in times 10. And I had to, I had gone to new levels of drunkenness. And so I had to always stay there. And what happened for me was, my progression of just always coming home obliterated was, I couldn't get drunk like I wanted to anymore. Us alcoholics, we talk about getting that feeling, you know what? I don't care what people think of me. I call it the release of myself, my freedom of bondage. I don't care what people think of me. That feeling that I used to get with 3 or 4 beers, I couldn't get there anymore. My body would get drunk, like hammered, like I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand up straight. I'm peeing the bed, all this stuff. But I couldn't get that feeling anymore. So I'm just pumping all this alcohol into my body, trying to get just the and I couldn't get there anymore. And that's the question was posed to me a couple weeks before I got sober. And the question was, what the heck? I'm using PG words. What the heck is wrong with you? And I'm obliterated. I'm just looking at my wife, and I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what's wrong with me anymore. I need help. I need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, but I'll only go if you come with me, because I'm too shy. I'm too self-conscious. I'm not going to walk into that place by myself. And the funny quick side story is my wife has the same sobriety as me. She's very strong, very, very strong in Alcoholics Anonymous, sponsors a lot of women, has a great story, all that stuff. I had no idea that she was an alcoholic. I had no idea that I was an alcoholic, let alone did I know that she was an alcoholic. She's drinking her 2 bottles of wine all the time and just wants to kill herself and all that stuff. And I thought it was just all me. And so she came with me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And what happened was I did not stop drinking when I first got here. I know now what I wanted was I just wanted to go there so that they could show me how to bring my drinking back to when it used to be, when I could have those 6 beers at night and get that feeling and go to sleep. I thought I was going to go there and learn to control my drinking. And so I would go to Alcoholics Anonymous for a couple of weeks. I would drink before the meeting, literally like drink in the car in the parking lot, and then walk in the meeting and sit there and then drink afterwards. And a funny thing happened is about a couple weeks of going there every night, still drinking, my wife looked at me, she says, how come you don't raise your hand? When they say in the meetings, they say, is anyone else an alcoholic? Raise your hand, right? I would never raise my hand. I would sit there, waiting for the effect to hit me, like, you guys are going to show me soon how to drink normally, right? I'd sit there, And I wouldn't raise my hand. I says, because I'm not ready to say I'm an alcoholic. No, I'm not going to, that means stopping. And I'm not going to stop. And, but you know what? On September 25th of 2019, I did raise my hand. I raised my hand. I said I was an alcoholic, and I cried. And my wife, she cried. And I had my first spiritual experience. And you know what? On September 26th, 2019, I texted my wife and I says, don't buy any beer today. And I was able to stop drinking for the first day in decades by choice. And it was my first spiritual experience. And my obsession was lifted, and I haven't had to have a drink now in over 5.5 years. I haven't had to have a drink, and I tell you what, man, it's an amazing feeling. I better slow down a little bit. We're only 20 minutes in. So my story is my sobriety, 5 years. And I'm not knocking anyone who's got 6 months. I had 6 months. I had 30 days. I had 2 days. I had 4 days. I had whatever. But I have such gratitude for being sober for 5 years, because my entire life, I don't know if anyone else is like this, but my entire life, I am a great starter, but a bad finisher. I will put so much manpower, money, will, whatever my thing of the day is, right? If it's going to be art, or if I'm going to learn how to weave, if I'm going to learn how to ride a motor, if I'm going to restore a car, I will do 10 million% on something, get all the way. And as soon as I think I messed it up, I quit. That's the way I've always been. Always, everyone says, Jason, you have such potential. It's like, potential. I am a bad finisher, and I know that about myself. And every single day that I'm sober, I am so grateful to be sober that I still want to be sober, right? Because that's what it is for me, is I want to be sober. I want to be sober. And it's not, you be around here for a little while, active in it, whatever program it is. You see people come and they go, and then you see them like really, really try. And then they're just gone, or they die. Just went to a funeral the other day for a kid that they found, 28 years old, just dead, drunk in his bed. So every day I'm here, but this 5 years has been such an absolute journey. The biggest part is, for me, is the experiences that other people get to have because I'm sober, right? It's like, again, I would have done, my example is this, I was there every single Christmas morning for all my kids. I like to use my daughter as an example because she's 17 now. And I got to eat every single morning. I was there Christmas morning under the tree while she unwrapped her presents, right? But the entire time I was sitting there, I was like, hurry the up so that I can start drinking, right? I would sit there with a cup of coffee, but it's like, oh my God, hurry up. And it's just like, I wasn't there. I was never there for her. And I was never there for my wife. I was never there for my job. I was never there for my mom. I was never there for anybody. Because if I was physically there, I would be checked out. Like, I need to go drink. Don't you guys know? And that's why we started this. Was like, I would go hiking. I've done phenomenal things drunk, phenomenal things, but I was never there. And the experience of the people, just, I don't have to say a word. You can read from me. It's like, you can read like, hurry the fuck up. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. We go on these elaborate vacations, and it was all geared around me drinking, all geared around me drinking. And today I get to know that, I'm having a neutral experience. I'm not adding anything negative to the experience as best I can. We did this hike today, and we went out to this peninsula, and we just sat there for an hour and a half, right? It never would have been an hour and a half before. It would have been 5 minutes. Okay, we saw it, let's go.
Yeah.
And today I can just be there and be present, and not be the guy that's like, hurry the hell up so that I can go do what I want to do. That's a great thing. You know, my personal story on this recovery thing is I have this huge self-will, the self-will that's so strong that it enabled me to drink for so long. I want to drink, so I'm going to drink. I don't care about the job, the wife, the mother who's 70, 80 years old and is watching this happen. You know, I have this self-will. My self-will in sobriety too is the thing that is well, it makes it part of my journey. But you know, I got here and I stopped drinking, and that was pretty much it. You know, everyone talked about get a sponsor, work the steps, all that stuff, and my self will was like, well, I'm not drinking, but I don't have to do that other stuff you guys are doing. You know, the steps. You know what, you guys, I'll sit down formally with somebody and do it like that. That's kind of childish. I'm going to do it myself, and I'm going to read the book by myself, and I'm going to just kind of do this, that, the other, and I'm gonna do things like secretary 6 meetings a week, and I'm gonna go to book studies. I'm gonna do all this stuff, and I'll help you with the coffee and all those things. But I'm not gonna do what you guys are suggesting. I'm not gonna ask another man for help, and I'm not gonna formally sit down and work the steps. You know, I know what that was mostly. A lot of that was fear, because it's very hard for a man, anybody, but for a man to ask another man for help when I really want it. It's really it's a little bit easier to just not give a crap and say, hey, will you help me? And they say, yeah, just go read that stuff and then we'll talk about it afterwards. But for me to go to a man who I know has knowledge about himself, for me to say, will you help me change my life? That's scary. Scary. And it took me a year. You know, I was a year, I like to call it abstinent for a year, doing all this other stuff. But what happens is I took my cake at a year sober or abstinent. And, you know, I don't know what I said when I took my cake. In California, we talk for a few minutes, happy birthday to you, and then we talk. I don't know what I said. But at that point there, I said to myself, man, I don't know if I'm going to stay sober I don't know what the long game is here. I need to change, because now I'm like that 7-year-old kid again. When I don't have my alcohol,
yep,
it's not a matter of like, well, I'm just going to be a good guy, or I'm just going to try and survive in this world. Without my solution of alcohol, because that's what alcohol was for me for a very long time, was a solution to myself or solution to the outside world. I don't have that now. How am I going to like stay sober for a really long time? And at that point there, I said to myself, Jason, you got to do this. You got to ask the man for help. And when I found this guy, and he would talk about the steps, and most importantly, he would talk about the spiritual malady that we suffer from. I said, I need help. And I asked him for help. And that's when my life really, really changed. You know, so about 4 years ago, and I'm going through the steps, and, you know, there's the steps are the steps. You know, I'm sure people have all heard of the steps, but essentially what that teaches me is that alcohol is indeed my solution to life. You know, we have the 12 steps, and the first one in Alcoholics Anonymous, or narcotics, whatever you want, it says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, and then there's a dash, that my life is unmanageable. And that life is unmanageable part, when I get here, yes, it's the DUIs, and I want to kill myself, and my wife's going to leave me. That's all very unmanageable. That's external stuff, right? But the dash, my life is unmanageable. I have to realize to myself, my life has always been unmanageable, even when I was a kid, because I was trying to manage life. I was trying to be quiet so no one would look at me, laugh at me. I don't understand, and I couldn't manage life. So what that is, that becomes my spiritual malady all through life, until I discover drinking, and then it's like, I don't need to manage shit. I'm drunk, and I stayed that way for years. And so the rest of the steps in whatever program, the programs I know, are to work on that, and that unmanageability, which for me is a spiritual malady. In the spiritual world, we're all God's children. You know, mean, nice, everybody is God's child. That's in my life. And when I stop trying to manage the world, that's the spiritual world, and that's what the rest of the steps are for. You know, I got to turn my will and my life over. I do this inventory that shows me how much I always care about what people think of me. You know, if I'm in a room of people and I hear someone snickering 20 feet away, I think they're talking about me, right? They ain't talking about me, you know. And then I got to repair some damage with some amends. And then I got to grow spiritually, and then I got to work with other people, and I work with a lot of other people. But my journey over these 5 years have been very growing. It's like they talk about in the program, peeling back an onion, these layers of an onion. I come in, I got this husk on me, and they do a little bit, and they peel some back, and you think, all right, I'm good. And then it's like new things happen, and then you peel it back more, and then you get closer to the core, and there's a whole new set of experiences. You get sober, and then you realize the big thing for me being sober is that I'm not going to be like, I thought being sober was like, yay, the whole time. I thought I was going to have 5 years of like, yay, not drinking, yay. And it's not like that. Stuff happens, people die. Job sucks, pisses you off once in a while. Your kids do things. Life happens, life happens. And part of sobriety is I get to experience those things. I get to respond to them rather than react to them, which is what I did my entire life. My entire life was like a pinball game. It was just like I'm always reacting to something. Always something's happening. Whether they're pissed at me, or I'm trying to be nice to these people to get something from them, or they're going to take something from me. And that was my entire life. And today stuff happens and I get to respond to it instead. And what happens is it turns those big valleys into like, more manageable things. And that's a good way to live, man. It's a really, really good way to live. And the best thing is working with people. I was at this conference. The reason I'm out here, besides family, I like to tell everyone it's family, but selfishly, because I am selfish, is I like to do a lot of stuff in general service for Alcoholics Anonymous. The stuff that nobody likes to do. But I went to there's this big conference out here. It's called PRASA, which is a Pacific region. So it's all the states on the West Coast of the United States. Pacific region, Alcoholics Anonymous Service Assembly. And it's basically, I think there was 800 people there that had all flown here from Texas. I don't know if Texas one, Nevada, Idaho, California, of course, Hawaii, all these things. And they all flew here to spend 3 days just to figure out how we can make sure that Alcoholics Anonymous is still here for the next generation. Right. And I see that. I don't just go to a room for an hour a day, be nice to people, and then it's like, okay, check the box. I'm good for today. I got to live this program. I do. And when I haven't tried not living it. I did actually for a year, but that first year. But I do a lot of stuff in Alcoholics Anonymous that a lot of people would be like, why do you do that stupid stuff? I tell you what. My mom was an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. My wife's an alcoholic. So you put two people with an allergy together. I got 5 kids. More than likely, 1 or 2 of them is going to have this same gene that I got, and my wife has. And it may happen. It didn't happen to me really until I was about 30, 35, where I was really like, really like it started progressing. My kids are right about that age, 30 years old. I want Alcoholics Anonymous to be here for them, just like it was for me. And my grandkids, 35 years from now, I want this thing to be just like it is. Not, I want it to be like it was 50 years ago, but it's not. I want it to be here for them, just like it was here for me. And so I do all this stuff to help protect the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous and do what I can to make sure it stays here. And I love it. For me, I'm blessed that my wife is in the program. All my kids are grown and gone, except for my daughter, who she lived up till 12 years old with me and her mom. I was never like I never hit. I never cheated. Formally, it never did any of that stuff. But for a child to walk around for the first 12 years of their life on eggshells, not knowing, how's daddy going to come home today? That's a lot of trauma. It's a lot of trauma. And I'm blessed that she's in Alcoholics Anonymous with us. She loves participating. She babysits at meetings. She's here at this conference with us, and she stayed with my son, and me and my wife got to do the conference for 3 days. And I'm blessed with the life I have. I got sober for me at the very right time. I had spent my days consisted of, I either worked and drank, or if it was my weekend off, I literally would not put on shoes for the entire weekend, because I would sit on this couch and I would binge watch TV and I would drink. And the only reason I had to put on my shoes was if my wife would not go get me some vodka, and I wanted vodka. So I had to put on my shoes. I wanted some vodka. I had to go get some vodka. And I spent 10 years on this couch, man. And I got sober at 49 years old, and my wife's in the program, my daughter's in the program. So I can go all in. I am all in, at least for now. I'm only 5 years sober. Probably when I'm 10 years, 15, if I'm sober that long, I may not do what I do today, but right now I do a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous. I work 10 hours a day. I go to a minimum of 2 meetings a day. I sponsor probably I don't know. I'm not supposed to say stuff like that. I sponsor a lot of guys. I do these conferences, district meetings, all this stuff, because it's almost, for me, I get the same feeling, and our book talks about this. I have to get the same ease and comfort from recovery that I used to get from alcohol and drugs, right? That feeling. And when I go into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous and I know that we're all there on the same purpose, it gives me that feeling. I get that, it's okay. And when I go and I do more and I go to these conferences or I sit with a sponsee and we read the book together, that's my vodka. That's like intense. It's just like, whoa. And it's a weird thing, who would think that you'd get that feeling that a substance used to give me from helping people. That's the whole God's children thing. It's like, I'm helping God's children. It doesn't have to be like formally like, thank you so much. It's just like, I don't even want to thank you. You don't understand. By me helping you, it's this paradox. I help you stay sober just by reading a book to you. That's all I do. Read the book with you, tell you my experiences. Hopefully you get some benefit out of it. But guess what? I'm staying sober. I sponsor people. They all get drunk, because if you're an alcoholic, you're going to get drunk. That's why I'm grateful I haven't gotten drunk. And I do all this stuff, and I tell my wife, I said, fuck, so-and-so's drinking. And she says, Jason, but you're staying sober. You're sober. I said, oh my God, that's right. Our literature talks about, that's how the guy who started this, Bob and Bill would sit with all these guys and his wife, Lois, and he'd say, they're all getting drunk, Lois. None of them sober. She goes, Bill, you're sober. And I get that. I understand that, So what else do I got? I have a lot of gratitude, I will talk about, this higher power thing. It's a big deal. It's a big deal because, I had nothing against God, nothing against, and God is just a placeholder word. That's very important to say. It's just a word, right? It's like God could be a car. It could be the girl of the week. It could be whatever it is. God, whatever I look up to, that's God, right? And so I never had any problems with church, or I wasn't a Catholic, no nuns hit me, none of that stuff, right? It's just that I think in my perfectionist mind, if I couldn't do the religion thing correctly, like I could never read the Bible. I don't understand the Bible. I'm like, I can't read it, and I don't want to go to church every day. So I just didn't do any of it, right? And I just had no contact whatsoever. And first thing that guy, when I asked him for help, I said, will you help me go through the book? And he said, yes, I will, but I'm going to give you a prayer. And I want you to say this prayer no less than 10 times a day. Say it up to 100 times a day. And essentially the prayer is just like, God, please lay aside everything I think I know for an open mind and a new experience. Because trust me, at 49 years old, I needed a new experience. And I said to myself, well, I don't know if I'm talking to somebody or I'm brainwashing myself, but I'm going to do it. And I did the prayer as best I could. And, my life started to change. I get on my knees every morning and I ask God, please help keep me sober. What does that do? Probably nothing. God does not then shine a light on Jason and say, I'm going to keep Jason sober all day because he asked me to on his knees. It doesn't work like that. What happens is when I have the willingness and the humbleness to get on my knees and ask God for help, then my mind changes and I want to stay sober and I want to go to meetings and I want to work with sponsees. It's my attitude is what changes, my wife and I, we pray together at night. Just, God, thank you for keeping us sober today. I'll tell you that this is an important footnote to all that. In the 5 years that I've been sober, I've only been to church 4 times. This is not about church. This is not, I've been to church probably on Christmas, one Easter when I was 2.5 years sober. I had a great experience because I heard something, but this is not about church for me. You know, it scares a lot of people. And a big thing I need to tell people is like, this is not about you become sober and the only way to be happy sober is to like join a cult. This is not a cult. This is about just something besides myself. I need to just something besides me. And then the rest of it takes care of itself. You know, we used to call them God shots or coincidences or whatever it is. But the longer you're sober and the more you peel back the onion and you start to see things that years ago would have blown my mind. It says, oh my God, how did that happen? You know, it's like I could be out here in Alaska and I'll run into someone that I know that has nothing to do with AA. And those kind of coincidences which used to be like blow me away. It's just like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. You know, it's how this whole thing works. I think what it is when you do the steps and you stop being in this, I'm in this bubble, right, of Jason. And that's my entire existence is Jason. Although I think I'm a nice guy, you know, I don't hurt anybody, but it's just, I'm constantly Jason. And when I stop that and I become a part of this world, you know what I mean? Just like start thinking of other people, then more coincidences happen because I'm looking outward now rather than in, and I see these things. You know, it's like when you're thinking about someone and then your phone rings and it's them. It's because now I'm thinking about somebody rather than thinking about myself, and that's why, you know, that phone probably would have rang anyway. But now I'm just not like on myself. I'm just like happen to be thinking of that person, and they call them. These are those things, you know, that I call it as like the coincidences or the God shots or whatever it may be.
I always say, is it odd or is it God?
Right. And at first it's just like, well, that's odd as heck. But you know what? Some things you can't explain to I think, so this is the thing is it was explained to me. I do a lot of stuff besides Alcoholics Anonymous to help with my recovery. I read a lot of different literature, and again, I should wear a shirt that says this is not about religion. It's not about religion, because the way I talk, you know, and I give credit, you know, I read this book called Sermon on the Mount, which is essentially an interpretation of the Bible or the Lord's Prayer. And, you know, or it's not even that one. There's another book by Clancy. That's what it is. A New Pair of Glasses, right? A New Pair of Glasses. It's just the way I perceive the world. It's the same world always, but he explains it like this. It's like you and me and everybody, we're walking around in this beautiful, colorful garden, right? We always have been our entire lives. Everybody in the world is this, it's beautiful and it's colorful and whatever. But when I'm drinking or in my disease or I'm selfish and self-centered, it's like I'm colorblind and I can't see it. I'm there. It's all there. It's always been there. But I can't see it because I'm colorblind. And what happens is a few things. Maybe you stop drinking, and then you see a little pop of color, a little bit more coincidences, and then it's like you work the steps and you start seeing more color, and then you start working with people and understanding this whole higher power thing, and more color. You know, the problem is I can be like sitting with you in this beautiful land right now talking about AA and everything's like colorful, but what happens is if I stop doing certain things, like if I say, you know what, I ain't got time to go work with that guy, or I'm not going to go to a meeting today, then I start to become colorblind again. I start seeing in gray tones, and then it's just like before you know it, if I do enough, if I get back into myself too much, then my only solution is a drink. And it's my only escape. All of a sudden, it's like a drink will become attractive to me again. You know, right now, I could be sitting in here. There's alcohol in this house right now, my son's house. It doesn't bother me. For an alcoholic who had to drink 24 hours a day, I am released from my obsession, right? But I am like, I do a few things, you know, I prayed this morning. I'm not in my natural environment, and I usually take my shower and get out of the shower and I pray, and I'm not in my house. So it's like I was up for about 15 minutes this morning. I said, shoot, I didn't pray. And so I excused myself, went into the bathroom, got on my knees, and I prayed. I have to do certain things, and I'll stay in this neutral position. If I stop doing certain things and say, that doesn't matter, I don't need to like go on a walk because everyone else wants to go on a walk. I don't need to go to a meeting. I don't have to call that guy who looks up to me at least for some sort of guidance. When I do that, then all of a sudden I'm sneaking down these stairs at 3 a.m. looking to see where my son's bottles are. You know what I mean? And that's what happens. The disease returns. And I think the reason I haven't had to have a drink in 5 years is because I love being sober and doing these things. Yeah, life is great, man. I have the exact same life. This is the example. I have the exact same life I've had for the last now, I'm going to say 30 years. Well, no, I'm going to say 18 years. Okay, I've been sober for 5. For the last 18 years, I've had the same job. I've had the same wife. Got the same kids. I'm the same Jason, right? This is in this physical world. I have the exact same circumstances, but my life is entirely different than what it was even a year ago, or even 6 years ago, or even 10 years ago. My life is entirely different. I always thought that life was about getting stuff. Like if I didn't like leave my family $1 million when I died, they weren't going to love me. This is what I thought life was, right? Society puts that on me. TV commercials, for an alcoholic who's always thinking about himself, then it's like, wow, his shoes are cooler than mine, or wow, his girl is hotter than mine. And that's just constantly. So I'm like trying to like get stuff, and I can't because I'm not capable of it, right? I can't go run a company. I'd love to like CEO a company or start a business or invent something and become famous and rich. But I can't. And so when I let that go, I actually have the same exact life I've always had. I make the same money to the dollar that I've made for the last 18 years. I got the same wife for 18 years, and my life is 1,000 times better than I ever would have imagined. When I got sober and I said, what do you want out of sobriety? Where do you want to be at in 5 years? I would have said, well, I want like a lifted truck, and I want big old house, and I want horses. That's what I would have written down. Today, what I get instead is to go on a trip that makes my wife, my family, my son, his wife, everyone is glad that we're here, and I get to have a free experience with it. It's like, again, that hike, it's like we just sat there for an hour and a half, and they even asked me, you ready to leave? And I'm like, nah, let's stay for a little bit more. That is the life that is beyond my wildest dreams. I never thought I would have that, the freedom to do whatever I want. Not monetarily, the freedom of myself. You know what I mean? I would have sat there out there on the cliff and just been like, I gotta get out of here. I have nothing to do, but I gotta get out of here. You know what I mean? That's the old, that's horrible way to live. Horrible way. And I don't have to do that today. The freedom is amazing. So what else you got for me, Joe?
You've done great, Jason. Listen, I like when I can be quiet sometimes. So, but what's a, you kind of mentioned a little bit about the prayer, but what's like a typical day, for you now? Like, how would you go through your day? Wake up and.
I'm personally, I mean, real deal. I get up, and if I'm on my game, I say to myself, God, please help me before my feet ever hit the floor. Generally, I've always been a kind of like alarm goes off and I get up, just get up, boom, I don't lay in bed, right? I get up. And I jump in the shower, I get out, and I get out of the shower, and I just say, God, please help keep me sober. If I'm lucky, my wife and I together will spend about 10 minutes together before we take off for our day, and we'll read a couple of things that they recommend, daily reflections and 24 hours a day. And then boom, off I go. Usually always, more than likely, I'm going to see a sponsee first for an hour. And then I'll go to a meeting for an hour and a half. Then I'll go to work for 10 hours. And then I'll generally go hit one more meeting and then come home and just do some stuff, So to answer your question, I think, the prayer thing is where I've gotten recently. See, this journey with sobriety is like, I had the thing where it's like, okay, you go through all the steps and I think, okay, I'm done. And I'm just going to stay sober now. But it says we continued to practice these principles. There's a principle behind every step. I got to practice these principles, not one or two of them. I got to practice these principles throughout my day, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a 10th step where 10 steps is basically I need to not let stuff get under my skin, right? And I had a time where about 2 years sober, I was having this thing where it's like I stopped enjoying Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't want to drink, but it was just like I wasn't like hearing the language anymore. I wasn't like sitting in a room getting the awe feeling, right? The awe feeling is big for me. I need to just, right? And I didn't know what was up. So I called my sponsor and I says, I'm not like enjoying Alcoholics Anonymous right now. He says, you need to do another inventory, Jason. Inventory is our 4th step, which basically tells me what's wrong with me. He goes, start writing, Jason. You're going to write down what you're mad at right now. And I'm like, nothing's bothering me. He says, write down what's mad at you. He says, you think it's only going to be 1 or 2 things, but you're going to find out you're like way out in the ocean. So I started writing. There's 25 things on my list that were bothering me, all in Alcoholics Anonymous, because it was my life. You know, stupid things like this person won't get off their phone in the meetings and this person keeps getting up, right? So I wasn't doing a proper 10 step every day, not necessarily not worrying about the person on their phone, but I had to figure out why that was bothering me. And so what happens is that's that whole thing where it's like, if I start letting stuff become about Jason again, the phone that bothered me, they're not doing it right, that person shares too much, then that stuff starts bothering me. I get cut off from my higher power. I say, I don't need you anymore. I got this. And then all of a sudden it's like, I need a drink. And so I was close. I was lucky. I mean, I was probably far away, but I was like, what's the next step after not liking Alcoholics Anonymous?
Mm-hmm.
Stop going to Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And then that's the story we hear from everyone. I stopped going for a while, and all of a sudden, before I knew it, there was a drink in my hand. And so today I've learned, and then I had another experience before where I was, this was about 6 months ago. That was scary. I was scared. You want some truth? I'll tell you some truth, man.
Mm-hmm.
I got real scared because my attitude was, again, that person's bothering me, but I've got good sobriety, so I'm just not going to worry about it. Sit here, be quiet. Don't just be a good example of Alcoholics Anonymous and don't react to that person. And I was like, damn, I am really not enjoying being sober right now. I am going to not come back to alcohol. I got a step closer. I was like, I'm not coming back to Alcoholics Anonymous anymore. And where am I going to go? And then I got scared because I'm like, I had no awe feeling. I don't want to drink. There's like one solution between those two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like hide the guns, right? And I was scared. I was nowhere, but it was like I saw it. I saw my life being played out over the next year. It's like, this is what's going to happen over the next year. And the lesson I learned from that, Joe, is I can't just ignore the stuff. I have to figure out why those things are bothering me. That's the 10th step. I have to figure out why is it bothering me that person's not doing what I want them to do. Why does that bother me? Well, it's more than likely because there's somebody in the room that I sponsor or I want to sponsor, or for one reason or another, I think they're messing it up for them and I'm not going to be able to save them. See, it's all about me. And when I understand that, then it's all gone. But in any case, I talked to some people, and when it all clicked for me, this problem I was going through about 6 months ago, I was sitting with a sponsee, reading about selfishness, self-centeredness, how I always want to run the show, very basic stuff. And all of a sudden it just clicked. It was like, Jason, you're like trying to run the shit again. You're trying to run the show. And it was gone. And I learned more in the last 6 months, probably than I've learned over 3 years. From simple experience, because nobody can tell me anything. I can only learn stuff through experience, right? Everyone was telling me for a year, get a sponsor, work the steps. And I was like, no, I don't need to. I'm good. Love you all. You guys do go ahead, right? I just wasn't being obstinate. I was being obstinate, but I was just like, no, I'm good. But I had to have the experience of a year abstinence without the steps for me to say, oh, I do need the steps, right? And so I have to have these experiences of like work the steps every day, all of them, and I'm like, oh, I'm good. No, I got 5 years. I'm good, until I had the experience of like I'm not good without working all the steps every day, right? And yeah. So what does my day consist of today? Is I try and just always when I'm going through something, or good or bad, I try and just at least just acknowledge, thank you God, or help me God, whatever. No, like, again, not about religion. This is just about I'm gonna have some shirts made. And this is just about turning it over. Jason, you ain't got to take this on. Let it go. And then at night, the best thing that's happened in my sobriety is at 3 years sober, 3 years, 2.5 years sober, my wife and I started praying together, just real simple tonight. God, thanks for keeping us sober tonight. Help us be of service tomorrow, maximum service. Thy will be done, not ours. And that's the best thing I've done. My sponsor said, Jason, your job as a man is to bring God into your home. And, I've done pretty well with that. Never in my life did I think that I would be like praying with. It seems like such a weak thing. It does. That's the way I was always perception of it was like, man, the man doesn't pray, and because I wasn't brought up like that. And but there's more power in that. I've always had a strong relationship, but it's unshakable foundation in my family and stuff, because there's some sort of, basically it's not even about, there's power in showing weakness, if it makes sense. There's when I say I'm powerless, there's power given to me, right? When I say I'm powerless, I get power. And so when I give up the thing in my house where it's like, I don't need to pray because I'm all powerful, when I say, you know what, I need some help, I get power from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? And both my daughter, my son, my wife, everybody, it's like, wow, I get more power by saying let's pray rather than saying no, I don't need that. You know what I mean? That's weak. Really, it's a paradox.
It's really hard to argue with your spouse when you're praying together.
Yeah, and we have an agreement. Is where it's like, you know what? Even if we were having some sort of an argument or whatever, it's like no matter what, we pray together. And that's very like. I see a therapist saying like, no, don't forget to pray together. No, it's just like we have an agreement and we both know that is the solution, whether it be like, because I'm a good, I would come home drunk and I would come home drunker than I was allowed to be. And I would not talk to her for 3 days because I'm going to show her, right? I'm very good at like, you're dead to me. And so when we get in these arguments, we both have this understanding that no matter what, we're just gonna pray. We don't have to talk or do nothing. I ain't gonna say sorry. We don't have to do any of that stuff. That all comes from the praying, but we're just gonna pray together. Yeah. And it's very rote prayer. It's just like, God, thank you for keeping us sober. But that little talking thing breaks the ice, and then it's like, I'm sorry, babe. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? It's so stupid. But hey, whatever works.
It works. And those who pray together stay together, brother.
Yeah, it's not about religion. It's not. Yeah. It's not. It's crazy, dude. It's I can't even explain it. No one could have explained it to me even a year ago where I'm at today. And I don't try and explain to anyone as best I can. I just say, you know what? Let's just stop drinking and let's just read the book together and we'll see what happens. Because nobody could have given me a set instructions. Absolutely not. My sponsor tried to say, as long as you do all this, you'll be fine. And I couldn't do all that. I had to have my own experience. And here I am today. So, sobriety is a great thing, man. A great thing. I may do other things to excess. I try not to, like stuff like this. If I'm going to go on a trip, I'll go do it to excess. I may do AA to an excess. I don't know. I may do service work to excess. I don't know. But you know what? I'm sober today, so I don't care. And the byproduct is hopefully I help some other people, or they get to watch me be sober, and then for action rather than promotion. Whatever. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate you. And but before I let you go, I have got to do my rapid fire questions with you. If you are ready, sir.
I am ready.
All right. What is your favorite recovery slogan?
Well, honestly, not about God couldn't would if he were sought. God could and would if he were sought.
What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
No matter what. I'm not going to drink no matter what, because I'm a real alcoholic. I do drink no matter what. If she's going to leave me, I'll drink. It doesn't matter. I'll drink. So, yeah, my least favorite is no matter what.
What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
A superpower that I gained from sobriety?
Sure.
That other people get to have their own experiences now without me affecting in it. I get to help people have their own experiences.
That's pretty cool. If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
You don't have to be so obstinate and fight so hard against a solution.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
Something from Journey, probably.
Nice.
Yes.
If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
Less sleep.
What step do you love the most?
What step do I love the most?
Yeah.
The first step, always. First step.
What step do you love the least?
The ninth step.
What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I told you so.
I love it. Well, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time today. Just so everyone knows, a new episode is released every Thursday at noon. You can listen to the show in your favorite podcast apps, Amazon Audio, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the. And we also appreciate if you like, subscribe, and share. Jason, thank you so much for joining me today, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your trip.
I will. Thank you, Joe, very much. Thank you.
All right, brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you. You got a good thing going.
Thanks, man.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's Experience, Strength, and Hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.